This is the Dive Into Discovery podcast, where curiosity meets insight, and every conversation uncovers a new layer of understanding.
All right, let's dive in today, and we're going way back to explore how the ancient Polynesians navigated the Pacific.
Thousands of miles across open ocean.
Exactly. And get this, no GPS, no compasses, none of the tech we take for granted.
It really puts things in perspective, doesn't it?
Totally. I mean, think about it. When was the last time you tried to find your way somewhere completely new without using your phone? Tough, right?
It makes you realize the magnitude of what they achieved.
Absolutely. So we're talking about the Polynesians settling islands across, 10 million square miles of ocean?
That's right, 10 million. Bigger than North America.
Wow. And they started doing this how long ago?
About 3,000 years ago.
3,000 years ago. I mean, it's mind-blowing.
It is.
And they weren't just island hopping, right? These were major voyages.
Absolutely. They were bringing everything they needed to start new lives. Families, livestock, supplies, all packed onto double-hulled canoes.
The bull-hulled canoes. So these weren't just simple boats.
No, not at all. They were essentially floating villages. Really a testament to their shipbuilding skills.
Floating villages, huh? So, carefully constructed, purpose-built for these long journeys.
Exactly. Think of two canoes connected by a platform.
Okay, I see. And that made them more stable?
Much more stable, yeah. Able to handle the rough seas. And the platform provided space for everyone and everything.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've heard about this star compass they used. But how did that actually work?
It wasn't a physical compass.
Right, but what was it?
It was all mental. They memorized star positions, constellations, created these mental maps of the sky.
So they're like walking astronomers.
In a way, yes. Using the stars to figure out direction, latitude, even the best time to set sail.
So it wasn't just random stargazing. Were there specific stars they looked for?
Oh, definitely. Stars like Sirius, constellations like the Southern Cross and the Pleiades cluster.
Okay, so I get that they used the stars, but how can you actually determine your location from the stars? Was it like using the North Star?
Well, in the Southern Hemisphere, they didn't have a single pole star like the North Star.
Ah, right.
They used the rising and setting points of different stars along the horizon to figure out east and west, like building a grid system in the sky.
That's incredible. It's like a whole different way of seeing the world.
It is.
But it wasn't just about the stars, right? You mentioned they were masters of reading their environment.
Exactly. They could detect subtle changes in ocean currents, noticing things like shifts in water temperature or salinity. They paid attention to wave patterns, understanding how swells refract around islands. Even bird flight paths could tell them something.
Wait, hold on. They use birds to find land. How is that even possible?
Well, seabirds, they often fly out to sea to feed during the day, then return to their nesting grounds on islands at night.
Ah, okay.
So the navigators learned to recognize these patterns and essentially follow the birds back to land.
That's incredible. Talk about being in tune with nature. So before we go any further, I have to ask about Thor Heyerdahl. His Kon-Tiki expedition, didn't he try to prove the Polynesians came from South America?
He did. He sailed a balsa wood raft from South America to Polynesia, to show that it was possible.
And what a journey that must have been.
It was a really daring adventure. However, the scientific consensus actually points to Polynesian origins in Southeast Asia.
So a valiant effort, but the evidence says otherwise. What kind of evidence are we talking about?
Well, there's linguistic analysis, archaeology, and most importantly, genetics. They all link Polynesians back to Southeast Asia.
Okay, so that seems pretty clear-cut. But then there's the whole sweet potato mystery, right?
Right. How did this South American staple end up in Polynesia way before European contact?
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Some think maybe Polynesian voyagers did reach South America and brought back the sweet potato. Others believe maybe seeds drifted across the ocean, maybe carried by birds,
So it's a mystery that's still waiting to be fully solved. Okay, so we know these voyages took incredible skill, but who was actually in charge? Was everyone on board an expert navigator?
Not quite. Each voyage had a wayfinder. Think of them as the master navigators, the ones holding all the accumulated knowledge.
So they were like the leaders, the keepers of the wisdom.
Yes, very respected figures in Polynesian society, entrusted with everyone's lives.
Wow, that's a lot of responsibility.
It was. And it took years of training, dedication. They started learning as children, from experienced navigators, memorizing the star charts, and mastering the art of reading the ocean.
Wow, that's incredible. So is this knowledge still being passed down today? Are there still wayfinders?
That's where things get really interesting. There's been a revival of interest in traditional Polynesian navigation. Organizations like the Polynesian Voyaging Society are working hard to preserve and revitalize these practices.
Really? So this ancient knowledge isn't lost, it's being actively revived.
Yes. They're building and sailing replica Polynesian canoes, like the Hokulea. In fact, in 1976, the Hokulea sailed from Hawaii to Tahiti using only traditional navigation techniques.
No way. From Hawaii to Tahiti without any modern instruments.
That's right.
That's amazing. What does that tell us about their methods?
It proves it wasn't just luck or random exploration. These were carefully planned expeditions.
So we're talking about serious navigational skills.
Absolutely.
It's pretty humbling, to think what they achieved. Are there any other specific voyages or settlements that really showcase this?
Well, think about Easter Island, one of the most remote inhabited islands in the world.
Right, with those giant moai statues.
Exactly. Their presence proves the Polynesians could reach even the most isolated corners of the Pacific.
It's more than just impressive. It's like a symbol of their incredible reach.
It is. They weren't just explorers, they were settlers. They established communities, really left their mark.
An inspiring legacy. And to think, we've only scratched the surface of this topic.
It really shows you how much they understood, about their environment.
Yeah, their knowledge of the ocean and its resources was incredible. They had to have developed some amazing fishing techniques to survive out there, right?
Oh, absolutely. Their fishing methods were as impressive as their navigation. They made these really intricate hooks and lures, each one tailored for different fish species, ocean conditions.
Wow. So
Okay.
like a whole different level of skill and precision.
Exactly. Imagine lures made from shells, feathers, even bone, designed to mimic the prey they were targeting.
That's amazing.
And they understood fish migration patterns too, so they'd strategically place their nets and traps along those routes.
So smart. It sounds like they had a deep respect for the balance of the ecosystem. It wasn't just about catching as many fish as possible.
You got it. Their fishing was tied to their cultural beliefs, respect for the ocean and its resources. They knew their survival depended on it.
Such an important lesson, about living in harmony with nature.
It is.
Thinking about those voyages, it makes you wonder what it must have been like. Facing the unknown with such courage. Did they have any rituals or beliefs that helped them, deal with the challenges of the open ocean?
Absolutely. Their spiritual beliefs were central to their seafaring life. They believed in divine beings who controlled the ocean, so they'd seek guidance and protection before setting sail.
I can only imagine, those rituals under the stars asking for safe passage.
It must have been powerful.
Yeah. So earlier we talked about the sweet potato mystery. Is there any other evidence maybe that points to contact between South America and Polynesia?
Well, the sweet potato is still debated, but there is some interesting genetic evidence. Some studies have shown shared ancestry between Polynesians and indigenous populations in South America.
Really? So that kind of adds fuel to the fire, right? Maybe there was some interaction between these distant cultures after all.
It's possible. It just shows you how much we're still learning about ancient history.
Absolutely. So what about coconuts? I thought those were originally from Southeast Asia.
That's right. And archaeologists have found traces of coconuts in Polynesian sites all over the Pacific.
So that lines up with the idea that the Polynesians were bringing plants with them as they traveled and settled new islands.
Exactly. It shows they weren't just explorers, but also skilled at transporting and cultivating plants in new environments.
It's incredible. So going back to the Polynesian Voyaging Society, how did they actually revive this ancient knowledge? I mean, it seems almost impossible to reconstruct those techniques after so long.
It was a huge undertaking. They had to do a lot of research, studying oral histories, traditional practices, ancient star charts.
Wow. So they were like detectives of the past.
In a way, yes. But it wasn't just book knowledge. They went further and actually built replica canoes using traditional methods and materials.
So they really lived it, didn't they?
They did. Their most famous canoe, the Hokulea, was built with incredible attention to detail. They wanted it to be as close as possible to the ancient vessels.
That's so cool. They worked with master navigators and shipbuilders to get everything just right.
Exactly, tapping into that living knowledge.
Speaking of knowledge, didn't the Polynesians also use the stars for more than just navigation?
You're right, they use them for agriculture too.
Oh yeah, I remember reading something about that. They used celestial events to figure out when to plant and harvest,
Well,
right?
exactly. They were like living calendars. For example, the Pleiades cluster, its appearance and disappearance in the sky helped them decide when to plant and harvest certain crops.
Wow. It's like everything was connected to the stars, their journeys, their food, their daily lives.
Exactly. Their entire worldview was intertwined with nature.
It really makes you think, In our modern world, it's easy to lose touch with those connections.
It's true. We depend so much on technology. Sometimes we forget to look up and observe the world around us.
It makes you wonder if we're losing those essential wayfinding skills, not just on the ocean, but in life.
It makes you think, doesn't it? The Polynesians, they relied on those natural cues, that deep connection to the environment. It gave them an incredible sense of, well, observation, adaptability.
Yeah. Qualities that were essential not just for navigating, but for thriving in those new island homes. It really makes you realize how much we rely on technology these days, Sometimes I think maybe we're losing touch with our own innate abilities because of it.
That's a good point.
So beyond navigation, what else can we learn from the Polynesians?
Well, their voyages weren't just about physical exploration. They were also about, spreading their culture, sharing their knowledge. As they traveled, they brought their language, customs, agricultural practices, their understanding of nature, all of that.
So they were kind of like cultural ambassadors, shaping the Pacific as we know it.
Exactly. Their voyages had a ripple effect, influencing the development of island societies throughout the region.
So it breaks down that idea that ancient cultures were isolated, right? It shows how interconnected they really were.
Yeah, it does. The Polynesian voyages are a great example of how ancient societies interacted and exchanged knowledge, ideas, even genetic material over vast distances.
Fascinating. It can't have been easy, right? I mean, their voyages must have been full of challenges, dangers. Did they always reach their intended destinations?
Of course not. The ocean, it's unpredictable. Even with their skills, there were risks. Storms, currents, even navigational errors could throw them off course.
Wow. Just imagine the courage it must have taken to face those uncertainties, knowing the fate of your entire community rested on your shoulders.
It must have been both exhilarating and terrifying at the same time.
Yeah, I can see that. So how did they deal with those challenges? How did they stay resilient?
Well, their social structure played a big part. They had a strong sense of community, very defined roles and responsibilities. During the voyages, everyone had a crucial role, from the navigators to the paddlers, the elders who shared their wisdom and stories.
So it was a true team effort.
Absolutely, and that collective effort, I think, is what gave them the strength and purpose to overcome challenges together.
It's a powerful message, about unity and shared purpose, especially when times get tough. We talked about the importance of ancestral knowledge earlier. Can you expand on that a little bit? How did that connect to their navigation and beliefs?
For the Polynesians, the past wasn't separate from the present. It was woven into their lives, They believed their ancestors still existed in the natural world, guiding and protecting them.
I can picture it now. The wayfinder, standing on the canoe, calling on his ancestors to guide them under the stars.
It's a beautiful image, and that connection to their past gave them a sense of continuity, purpose, belonging.
It adds a whole other dimension to their journeys, doesn't it? It becomes more than just a physical voyage, it's a spiritual one too. So as we wrap up our deep dive today, what are the key things you hope our listeners will take away from all of this?
Well, I think the Polynesian voyages remind us that exploration isn't just about conquering new places. It's about expanding our understanding of ourselves, our place in the world.
And our interconnectedness with all things.
Exactly. And it's a challenge for us, I think, to rediscover our own abilities, to observe, adapt, navigate the complexities of our lives with that same courage and resilience the Polynesians had.
It's a powerful message. To keep looking beyond the horizon, both literally and figuratively. To never stop seeking knowledge, embracing challenges, and finding our own way, guided by the wisdom of those who came before us. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey, and until next time, keep exploring.
What did you think of this week's episode? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to join us next time as we dive even deeper. And as always, stay curious, because you never know what discoveries are just around the corner.